In the matter of People versus Kimberly Starr, the judge was visibly agitated when he concluded, quote, "I obviously find Ms. Starr not guilty of this charged offense. Quite frankly, I can't believe we were here for this trial." As he fixed his gaze on the prosecutor, Deputy District Attorney Autumn Renshaw. Judge Cisna appeared dumbfounded while explaining that if she just took the time to read the charges, a quote, "there's nothing that would support the charge in any way, shape, or form."
Yeah, it's hard to charge people with trespassing when you're on public property.
Yeah.
It's like...
Pretty much. And you could see, like, bailiffs came out into the courtroom to watch the ruling, kind of...
Because they thought she was going to get taken away.
Yeah, Verbena put it one way, yeah, she pretty much thought that that's why they were there to watch her. And it was actually quite brilliant that she represented herself and was able to exclusively question Lieutenant Merle Harpham of the Eureka Police Department and also the city manager, David Tyson. And they both admitted that they, behind closed doors pretty much, had meetings on the matter of the encampment and what to do about it. And Verbena Starr allegedly believes that they broke open meeting laws. And that Paul Gallegos, who I actually sat down with and had an interview with, said that he talked to Ms. Starr about Brown Act violations and that sort of thing by the city, and that they are enforced by the Fair Political Practices Commission. And in fact, they actually don't. And so I've tried to get back a hold of the district attorney, and so I don't know really how he'd proceed and if he would do anything. But it was very interesting to watch happen.
Well, that's some good exclusive news from Unstacking the Deck.
In our last local story, we have complaints in Eureka led to 79 plants and 4 pounds of processed buds to be seized, along with a eco-friendly triple beam scale. Electrical modifications led the power to have been cut off at the unit, pending being restored to code and verified. There's no additional details on exactly how the wiring was altered. And it also wasn't clear if a 215 was held by the 2 people that were placed under arrest during this incident. But EPD assures us that state limits are respected, which comes at a time, actually, of a California Supreme Court ruling that actually seems to have changed the playing field in that sense, which will bring us into our state news. So this California Supreme Court ruling, it shoots down medical cannabis restrictions in a unanimous ruling in a case called the People versus Kelly. Kelly was reported by a confidential informant for having over what is now an arbitrary limit of 8 ounces. He had 12 ounces and 7 plants, and now a reasonability standard is going to be applied to each case, which is going to be very interesting to watch play out, and I'm sure there's going to be a very interesting range of different rulings on this matter.
It will depend on the judge, probably.
The judge and the circumstances and medical conditions, all that kind of thing. So this reasonability standard will now be applied, and experts testified what Kelly had would have only lasted him a few weeks. And so it actually was not irrational or unreasonable that he had that. So now all the energy that's been used across the state to fight medicinal cannabis or to try and get under control some negative externalities or perceived negative externalities, all these efforts are now worthless. And we can now work on more reasonable issues like perhaps the meth problem in Eureka. Recently the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors, our last show, was working on creating guidelines, and now it's completely futile.
So the Supreme Court basically ruled that any proposition that's passed by the voters of California can't be later altered by the legislators in Sacramento. That was what the decision was.
Yeah.
So how is this going to affect other propositions is my question. Like the recent gay marriage proposition, which made a constitutional amendment to make marriage only between a man and a woman. Now that cannot be altered by legislators.
It will have to be altered by proposition.
Right, by the voters.
So this definitely changes things in a very large level for state politics. But that's what makes our state unique, and then we can have that. Not all the states do have the right to do propositions.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
You know, proposition actually came from Switzerland back in the 1800s, is where it originally came to California from, and it's gone to other states as well.
Cool.
Changing gears here, the Assembly has just had a bill put in which would basically approve for penalties for rape bystanders. There was the recent case of the girl who was raped apparently out in public after a high school dance.
Yeah, Richmond
High School, and the legislature of California wants to put in a bill which would basically criminalize bystanders, anyone who stood by and didn't do anything by calling the authorities or anything like that. The law is already in place for any child that's under 14 years old. If you see any type of lewd or murderous acts going on around a child that age, you're required by law to report it to the police. Now, what this is going to do is get rid of the age limits. If you see this type of activity happening to anybody, you're required to report it to the police at the very least. Truly, probably somebody should take action immediately and stop the actions like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just kind of common sense that people would get involved and do something, but there's very interesting social psychology experiments that have been done which show a frightening dynamic of what it takes for someone to get involved. And incidents like this also further prove it in the real world, not in an experiment by a university, like somebody acting like they're choking or having a heart attack dressed like a bum or dressed like a businessman on a subway, and like nobody responds generally until somebody else does first. And so if people start to take the initiative, in certain situations there may not be anybody to do that.
Yeah, there's so many situations you see where I read stories where people get trampled on Black Friday going to get stuff, and people just run over them. They don't even care that someone's on the ground, suffocating.
No, you gotta get that PS3, man.
Yeah, exactly. It's just crazy. People, have no respect and common decency around others, and this would make it a law. You'd be charged if you don't act.
Well, it's going to be very difficult to kind of prove this kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and also it's going to be very weird because it creates an additional pressure now for an additional type of an enforcement, which may make some people that do witness these kind of atrocities less likely to report.
Yeah, it's possible. We'll have to see how it works, and of course, laws are never the ultimate answer for anything. Truly, people need to, grow. Their morals have to develop better. That's the true thing, and that is not going to be anytime soon.
Yeah, social pressures, not legal pressures, are more likely to create a positive outcome.
Social pressures, definitely.
Our next story is that Governor Schwarzenegger is now proposing to put speed sensors on a bunch of traffic signals across the state. The California Department of Finance says that this would generate $1 billion by catching 2.4 million offenders annually. So I'm sure there's a lot of other ways we could generate revenue besides automated police systems.
Yeah, especially when they just go and get people for red lights. I've actually got a ticket for going past a red light before, and I didn't actually go through a red light. In fact, in California, you should all know this out there, in California, you can be charged with going through a red light if you're simply over the limit line. If you're stopped over the limit line.
I believe it, dude. They can rigidly enforce laws at any time if the officer chooses to do so. Another budgetary move by the governor is wanting to send 20,000 illegal immigrants to a prison that would be in Mexico and would also save us $1 billion in revenues by having a prison built by us there and then maintained in Mexico, which I think is just kind of ridiculous because it doesn't really address the socioeconomic causes and the reliance on our state for the Mexican labor. There's films like A Day Without a Mexican went through like tons of statistics about how essential they are to a lot of functions in the state. Prison industrial complex is making a killing off of this while, Walmart executives say, we prefer to use immigrant labor. Blatantly like having policies. Our construction industry is founded a lot on this kind of labor and tons of other things.
Oh yeah, and especially now with the SPPP, the Security and Prosperity Partnership, the North American Union, all of that coming about. Really what's happening is the governments, the elites of Canada, the United States, and Mexico have gotten together in order to basically rule over all of us, to try and make a complete rule over everybody. And, what I would be really worried about this thing is if I was living in Mexico, I would be worried about my country's sovereignty.